Well, thank you ever so much for inviting me in and giving me the opportunity to share some insights, if you like. And I guess it's a development of the talk today is a development of the doctorate that I did at Brooks. My doctorate focused on how we work through a coaching. How do we work with entrepreneurs to aid their development? And that through the dialogue, through the I feel like the exploration of conversation. How do we help people build that competency towards building an entrepreneurial mindset? And the talk today is linked to my role as entrepreneur in residence at Oxford Brookes. I was asked to come in and explore something that was of interest. And this is a model that I'm building, that I'm working and with clients here and now. And I thought it would be really great to share it because it helps people get unstuck and gives a framework for something of what is an entrepreneurial mindset. So it starts to explore that. Thought it'd be great to share it and get some feedback on this as well.
I'll just say this, it's a real treat to have you. A lot of people have the feeling that entrepreneurialism, you have to be born with it. You can't develop it, you have to do you can't just sort of develop this mindset. So it's something I'm really interested in hearing about. How can you develop this mindset? There's a formula. You'll tell
Mhm.
us about it in a bit.
I'll do my
Uh,
best. I'll do my best. It's funny because the whilst we're just waiting for others to come in, when I started doing the research, my master's was in entrepreneurship. It was an MBA in entrepreneurship, and one of the things that I had to unpick was actually that very argument: is it nurture? Is it nature? Can we help in order to answer the question? Can people be developed through conversation? I needed to identify whether actually it was feasible, whether it was a born asset in our gene makeup, or whether it's something that we can develop. And the jury's out. Although there's far more evidence nowadays that you can develop it, and the way of thinking can develop it. But entrepreneurial thinking is only one aspect. It can be applied to anything we do on a day-to-day basis. It's the way in which we act and the way in which we learn, I think, which is it's sort of that adds a richer flavor to how we operate as leaders, or whether we're just doing research, something like that. It's just how we think in the moment can be an entrepreneurial thinking, but actually in the setting of something that's actually quite stoic or quite structured. So yeah, there's lots of benefits here. I work with all sorts of people, fixed mindset, growth mindset, and they all seem to have find a way through by using an entrepreneurial mindset.
so welcome everybody. If you've just come in the room, Nigel's just been giving us a bit of a taste of what we can expect in the next hour. Over to you, Nigel.
Thank you ever so much. I'm just going to say hi to everybody first, and then I'll share my screen. Wonderful to meet you all. Thank you ever so much for taking your lunch break to come and sit with us today and have an exploration of what the actual mindset is and what we can do with this. This talk that I'm going to do today, we is linked to my research. My research was around how do we develop entrepreneurial mindset when through dialogue, through conversation. I'm a practicing coach as well as entrepreneur. I've worked with hundreds, literally hundreds and hundreds of coachees, which are entrepreneurs as well as business leaders from all different walks of life. And this is all sort of grounded on a basis of having a successful European business that I sold and exited in 2017. Some of the ideas today that I'm going to share with you are driven through dialogue, through conversation, through observations, but they're all theory and evidence based. So these are all things that you can link back to authors that are quite known in this space for having a good understanding of how we keep people moving forward. And I'll make sure we make reference to those, and they're on the slides as we go forward. We'll provide the slides for you as well at the end, if that's okay, Nicole.
Yeah.
We can send that out after. I think the one of the requests we had was this makes life a little bit easier if you have a challenge or a problem that you're trying to think through at the moment, and I'll pause at set points during the talk for you to explore this problem and challenge within the framework that that we'll present to you today. From a psychological safety point of view, I'm not going to be calling anybody out, but actually, if people want to speak up and to share their ideas and their thoughts at the times when we'd open up the floor, then that would be absolutely great. It makes the whole experience much better for us all. I'm here to learn as well, so it would be great to hear what your thoughts and your understanding is. It's always nice from my point of view as well to know whether the ideas are landing. Um, we've given you a little bit of an overview of where we are. So the presentation, what we're going to talk about today, are the 5 modes of the growth mindset and how you can actually grow your mindset. What we tend to think about, as I mentioned earlier, is that entrepreneurships and entrepreneurs is, as Nicole very kindly said, is it nurture, is it nature? I'm of the firm mind that it's a mixture of both. Yes, you can have an aptitude towards it because you're an extrovert, etc., and you're just going to go out and talk to anybody. But also, you can build the way in which you think towards an outcome that is beneficial to you. You do not need to be all the traditional way of thinking of an entrepreneur as a risk taker and be resilient and be confident and be that networker that's in the room. You don't need to always. That's one version of an entrepreneur. I know a lot of entrepreneurs that are introverts that are very committed to the entrepreneurial journey that they're on, but actually expose themselves to experiences that means that they grow, and as they grow, they develop the skill set that is an ongoing moving feast, if you like. But one thing that they're really good at, and this is what I notice in my coaching sessions, they got great ideas, but sometimes we get stuck in a place, and that one place is the same place that we revisit time and time again. And when we get stuck, that then creates challenges around how do we then move forward from that. So it's not always about all the things that we think about an entrepreneur being. It's more about how we can respond effectively when things are uncertain, when they're messy, and when we get stuck. Now, this can directly relate to everything that you do on a day-to-day basis. So it can relate to an assignment that you're going to write. It can relate to um, uh, um, when you're going to do your shopping on a day-to-day basis. It's basically it's related. There's points at which we hold a pattern where things remain the same and we don't move on from there. What I hope to share with you today is some ideas around switching modes. And the modes are things which are related to our mindset and consciously. The highest level of wisdom I once heard was the ability to think about thinking. And this is where we're going to have a little bit of a play. So let's just move on with the first overview slide, which is very much around for the entrepreneurs in the room. This fixed piece around the entrepreneurship mindship is mindset. Sorry, the entrepreneurship view is one of a fixed personality trait. But actually, what I found in my research, in my understanding and working with hundreds of entrepreneurs, is that entrepreneurship is a series of dynamic situations. It's how we react and how we interact with those situations. It's not about having all the answers and just brute force moving through, but it is about acting with intentionality and deliberately. And I love that word, acting deliberately to generate clarity and data. So the more information that we have, the better decision we can make, and the better progress we can make through the challenges that are there. The problem comes when we start and we just stay on one course and way of thinking. So if we stay in one mode, so if we stay like, for example, I'm doing I'm launching a business and I stay in planning mode, then I am constantly going to be planning and I'm not going to get any traction in going forward. So I'm missing that vital piece of being deliberate and being intentional. This links into some work by Daniel Pink as well around levels of motivation. there's external motivations and there's internal motivations. And the internal motivations are all about purpose and about the internal, about us having autonomy and doing what we need to be doing. So these are intrinsic things that are happening within us, not things that are happening to us. So somebody saying something to you is motivational, and that's coming from the external world. But actually, when you take control of your internal world, then motivation starts to build and becomes a little bit easier as well. And what we're going to look at is some of the core ideas around this, around the how do we move the mindset forward. Now, the sections that I'm going to go over I'm going to introduce the five modes. We'll have a little bit of an explore. I want you to then think about the challenge that you've got. We'll then break that down into a little bit of detail. And then explore and see if we can land on some solutions for you. But like I said, psychological safety, we're not going to put anybody in a situation where they feel that they have to talk. It's up to you if you want to engage. So thinking about this, let's start to explore these five modes. So the five modes, these aren't personality types for starters. These are transient modes that you could be in at any moment in time. You can move through between them as freely as you like. So let's introduce them as a really high level so that we can start to think about what I'm doing when I'm acting and what I'm looking to achieve through that purpose. So the resourceful mode, that's instead of thinking I need to do more before I begin, is what can I do with what I already have? So it's a mind shift. What we're looking to do is think about how I can think differently about what I'm trying to do, the challenge, the problem that I have at the moment. So if I think about that in a different way, how can I move things forward by starting with something that I already know or I already have access to? And like I said, I'm just introducing these at this stage. Don't worry if they aren't landing yet and they don't make perfect sense. This will start to make more sense as we dig deeper into them. The experimenter mode. This is about when you get to a point when you're overthinking and you're trying to get traction to move the idea forward or the challenge or the problem that you're trying to take apart. What's the smallest useful test that you can do to be able to increase that knowledge, that data, that understanding so that you can then move forward? So rather than trying to eliminate uncertainty before acting, you can run a small experiment to generate something that's really can sort of accelerate your thinking in moving forward. So if again, think about this in the context of your problem, your challenge, but also think about this in the context of if I'm an entrepreneur and I'm starting a business or I'm running a business, these sort of ideas with what resources are available to me to answer the problem or the challenge I'm having. If you're in research, experimental mode, I'm stuck. I don't know how I can get forward from this. What little tests can I do that's going to help me move this forward? The next one is learning mode. Now, this mode is really important after setbacks and uncertainty. Instead of judging yourself or seeing failure as final, you treat the outcomes as information. It's okay, what is this teaching me? What's this scenario? What can I take away from this that's useful for me? Maybe not even in the context of where you are. And we'll talk about this in a little bit more detail as we go into the other slides. But the idea here is about actually every thought process that we go through, there's a learning opportunity here. And I think that when I think about learning, learning is I can't remember everything I did on my doctorate or everything I did on my master's, but actually my mind has changed due to the process that I've been through. That's now created a different way of thinking. So what could you take away from that one situation that's a learning, something that's useful for you? The next one is challenger mode. Now this mode is one of questioning assumptions. It's something. Sometimes it's the things like that are blocking us are assumptions that are inherited. They're not real in the real world, but someone has said to us, you can't do this or you shouldn't do this. So thinking about how can I challenge that as a mode? Being entrepreneurial, that's key. It's one of the things that you naturally expect an entrepreneur to do, to not go with the status quo. Excuse me. But within anything, within the work job that you do, by not challenging assumptions, then you just accept the norm, the reality of the world in which it is. And a big advocate of this and made really popular is obviously Elon Musk is a great example of that. Doesn't listen to what the assumptions are and constantly challenges that. And lastly, is the ownership piece. Now, this is about agency. This is about when we take the external circumstances, when we're feeling overwhelmed, when the mode brings us back to the focus of what can I control, influence, or act on right now? What am I trying to? How can I own this? What small thing can I do that allows me to take back control or to actually do something within this space? What action can I do that gives me agency in this scenario? So when thinking about all these five modes, and we'll start to explore them in a little bit more detail, and they'll start to make more sense as they all come together. Each of these modes are different approaches to solving different kinds of challenges or problems, and they do them in different ways. And the challenge is knowing when to switch. But you could move through each of them in just one challenge, one example. You might start at one place and jump from learning mode to resource mode. However, they do tend to be cyclical. Now, if you think about this in the context of a conversation that you might be having, now this model, what I would say, is also really useful in another regard. And that regard is that it's a self-coaching tool. It's one where once you've got this, one of the things that I prescribe to my clients that I work with is that at least for half an hour every week, they should be sat in a coffee shop with no technology, with a really good cup of coffee, and they should be journaling what the challenges are within their business or within their life or within their whatever that might be, the transitions that they're going through, whatever that challenge is. This tool, what we're just about to work through, allows you to think about that and self-coach. And this is where I'm trying to put in, there's a challenge in here for you. So how does this work? Well, this works in this regard, that if we were to ask these style of questions, so for example, the green, which is resource, I can't move forward until, well, list three current assets that you've got, three things that you could do that you have access to. They could be contacts, they could be excuse me, excuse me, let me just take a swig here. They could be books, they could be videos, they could be online resources, they could be your lecturer, they could be your business owner, they could be an accelerator, business accelerator that's close by. So I can't move forward until is probably one of the highest ranked questions that I have to deal with working with people which are business leaders and entrepreneurs. I just need to was generally the opening statement. I just need to do this, or I just need to wait until that person comes back. Well, list things that if you list the three assets that you've got available to you, you could find a way around that. And that's something that's helping you get unstuck. The experimenter piece, I need more data. This is researchers for you. Run a small test. Okay, I've got this idea in my mind. Eric Ries on the Lean Startup will suggest that what you should be doing is saying, okay, I've got this idea. I'm going to talk to 10 people. And those 10 people, I'm going to get some ideas from them, some thoughts that's going to help me become unstuck, because there'll be something in those conversations that will validate my thinking or challenge my thinking, or someone will say something and you just go, oh my God, that's so straightforward what you're saying. That really helps me now move forward. So we've thinking about things in a very dynamic way now, not in a stuck way. I'm stuck in my lane. I need to stay here thinking about, okay, I need more data. Okay, well, let's do a test. What's a really quick test? Something you can do. One of the programs that was on years ago was called Team Entrepreneurship Program, and I supported on that, and it was as a coach. And the idea was everything you could learn from being an entrepreneur, you could get from running a lemonade stand. So what the first thing you need to do is don't come to me with all the questions and the answers, is go and source the lemonade, go and grind it, go and get a stand, go and find a place where you're going to sell it, decide on how much you're going to charge, start talking to customers, and then start actually physically doing it, because we learn by experimentation. So that idea experiment piece is really key to this. So the learner piece, maybe I'm not cut out for this. Okay, we self-doubt. That's there's learnings in this for us all. Um, think about things that are objective insights. Speak to others and get some insights from them around what why might you be thinking that way. Think about this as a conceptual piece that um, it's about the learning, it's about what you can take away from this, and perhaps it's an area where you need to improve. So think about it as okay, what can I take away from this? The challenger, which is the red, which is they'll not let me do it. Again, that's something that you hear quite often. Um, but there's bound to be some variable in there that you can do something with that will help you get traction to move forward. There must be something that the people aren't closing you down to the point where you can't challenge the scenarios that you're in. Entrepreneurs are particularly good at this, is saying, well, actually, I'm going to do it anyway. I'm going to move in this direction. I'm going to try this. And as long as it's safe and it doesn't put you at risk, etc., then that should be absolutely fine, because the assumptions sometimes we have are assumptions that are built on other people's assumptions, not on our own assumptions. So yeah, think about that challenger piece, because that's pivotal to where we are. And like I said, we'll be exploring it a little bit further in a moment. And the purple one at the bottom corner, that is just how the industry works. Well, that's ripe for entrepreneurship. Identify one fixed rule and break it. This is exactly this doesn't go down so well when you're doing your research, admittedly. So you wouldn't be doing this in this regard. But actually, if the assumption is, I guess AI is a really good example of universities having to change with these challenging these pieces around. Okay, there's these assumptions, and that's the way it is. Well, actually, the world's changing around us. How can I leverage what I've got within that world to, in a fair way, and within the rules that I'm given, but actually, how can I make that work? So, thinking about these are really broad strokes. Once again, we're going to go into each one of these in a little bit more detail. But what I'd like you to do now is just take the next 20, 30 seconds just to think about a business challenge or a career challenge or a project that you're involved in or an entrepreneurial journey that you're on, something that you might be stuck with, that might be a bit messy and is hard to unpick, something that you might be overthinking. So, overthinking directly relates to overworking. So, just take the next 20, 30 seconds just to hold this in your mind and explore it and ask yourself these questions. So, what am I currently doing in response to this challenge? It's the first question. Second question is, but don't have to be in order. You can only answer one of them if you like. It's absolutely fine. What trigger am I experiencing? So what am I? What's driving this? And we'll come into that in a little bit more detail in a moment. And what mode am I currently operating in? So just give you 30 seconds, and don't worry if it's not clear at this stage. Okay. We'll move on in a little bit then. Sorry you're having to listen to my voice all this way through, my dulcet tones of like quite neutral. I do apologize. I'll try and expand my breadth of my voice a little bit because it must be becoming quite monotonous. Um, yeah,
Nigel, if you would like a break, we just had one request,
fine,
kindly.
fire away.
Millen, she has to leave. soon. So she asked kindly if she can reach out to you and get in touch after this session. Is that fine with you,
Please do.
Nigel?
Yeah, absolutely. Please do. Anybody can get in contact with me. Yeah, that's fine. And either we can send the email address or certainly they can connect with me through LinkedIn, whatever they prefer. But I would absolutely welcome the opportunity to speak with them. I'm just really pleased that she wants to talk to me after, so that's fine.
So I hope that answers Milline's request.
That's great.
We're very happy.
Cool. Excellent stuff. Okay, so let's now explore your challenge in a little bit more detail. So I'm going to ask some questions of you now. And again, you'll have this pack. So when you're sat in that coffee shop on a Friday morning for half an hour with no tech, and you've got this challenge and you want to think these things through, you can work through these questions to identify what looks like. And we'll give you a little matrix at the end that helps you analyze this in a little bit more detail as well. So let's move on without any further ado. We're going to go into each one of these in a little bit more detail and see what question we're looking to ask. So the first one is the resource mode. So the emotional trigger, remember, this isn't psychometric testing. This is a state of mind that you're in. This is the way in which you're thinking about the problem or the challenge. So this might be where you're stuck, where you're messy, where the problem is. So you're feeling, you feel stuck, under-resourced, or you are waiting for the perfect plan. And this is, I see this all the time. Is I can't move on until I've got that extra piece of detail, or I just need to get the website up and running before I start talking to customers, or I can't start my project because I haven't got that piece of information, or the tutor, the lecturer hasn't provided me that briefing. I can't get on with this stuff. So if you're in that mindset of being stuck, you need to move from I need more to begin to I can start with this. So the question that you're looking to ask is, what can I do with what I already have? So it's that resource piece of what's available to me right here, right now. And that can be things like we were talking about earlier. It can be things that are directly accessible. So if I'm starting a business, it can be, well, why can't I start talking to my customers, the potential customers that I'm going to have? Why can't I start doing research? And if you remove the I can't do this and reframe it to what I can do, then it opens up great opportunity here. So what can I do with what I already have? So thinking about your problem and your challenge, think about that question, and relate it to your challenge. What can I do with what I already have? Try and get one or two things down that that are useful for you in terms of this as an. Bear in mind you might have points in all of these, and that's in all of these five modes of thinking. But the trigger is you're stuck, under-resourced, or you're waiting for the perfect plan. I know perfectionists have this problem all the time. Okay. Let's talk about the experimenter mode. So this is when you're overthinking. Just remember, overthinking means overworking. It means that you're working much harder, your brain's working much harder, probably on things that it doesn't need to, because you're overthinking. You're endlessly researching. I just need to do this last bit. I suffered massively from this on my doctorate. I just need to do one more interview. I just need to find out a little bit more about this over here. It made no difference to the overall thesis at all. But it did open up my mind to, okay, I just need to stop. And sometimes you just need to be aware of that. So your emotional trigger is you're overthinking, you're endlessly researching, you're feeling paralyzed by the need for certainty. And I think this is quite important here as well. When you think about what we're doing is we're building self-awareness. One nugget that's directly related to this that came out of my research was, and it was pretty much dominant within in coaching sort of philosophy, is that we help people build self-awareness. And self-awareness is the high level piece through dialogue. The second piece down is through what we do by creating self-awareness is we help them build clarity. And through that clarity, things become a little bit clearer. The experimenter mode allows us to do that. But then once you've got that clarity, then you can focus. So you've gone from, I've increased my knowledge and I've got a better understanding of what's going on in the world. I've then gone, actually, things are a little bit clearer. Now I'm drilled down to, actually, I now know what to do. And that's a really nice, simple framework for thinking about where we are. So coming back to there should be over talking on there for my benefit. Overthinking, endless researching, feeling paralyzed, and the need for a certainty. So what we're doing is we're moving from that perfect planning to rapid prototyping. That's trying things the smallest piece at a jump at a time as quickly as you can. So it's about what is the fastest, smallest way to test this. Now, this that statement I think is also linked. This is Eric Ries's work, but it's also linked to procrastination. And procrastination is Tim Urban is a wonderful YouTube on Tim Urban online talking about procrastination and the monkey on the shoulder and the monster that comes in and tells you that you don't have to worry about doing that piece of work. Let's go and doom scroll for a little bit longer. It's that type of scenario. What he found out in his research, which I think is really relevant here, when you're thinking about perfect planning and you're thinking about rapid prototyping, he found that there's two types of procrastination. First is that it's stress only comes when it's time bound. Procrastination is not an issue as such when it's not time bound because you don't feel the stress and the pressure associated with it. However, the second piece is the bit that this directly relates to. The biggest antidote to procrastination is starting something small. And it's the idea around, I'm going to go for a run in the morning. So I'm going to put my shoes, my shorts, my top at the bottom of the bed because you've made a step towards doing that. The complete antidote to that is starting something really small. Okay, I've got an assignment I've got to write. Okay, I'm going to write a paragraph. And the likelihood is you'll have written 3 or 4 by the time you finished, but it's starting. And that's where this experimenter mode comes in for. It's about, okay, I'm going to start playing with this stuff. What's the fastest, smallest way I can test this? Okay, let's talk about the learner mode now. So the emotional trigger, you've just experienced a setback, you've failed a failed test or a sharp dip in your confidence. Maybe something like a colleague said something to you that's not useful and not helpful, and you start to doubt yourself. You're moving from the mind of judging outcomes to extracting insight. We're moving to a point that's positivity. We need to reframe this whatever's gone wrong into something that's a learning opportunity for us. Entrepreneurs are great at doing this. They're great at saying, what is this teaching me? Why? I remember an example, really short story, of a much bigger story. But when I was running my business, so we had 450 staff across Europe, and one of the directors was a very fixed mindset. And I remember him getting really frustrated with me in a board meeting because I have the ability to think about that's a sunk cost. I made that decision yesterday. I've learned from it. It went wrong, but tomorrow's another day. And where do we go from here? And it used to frustrate the hell out of him because he was like, no, you can't just do that. You can't just write off £10,000 just for the sake of it because you've gone through something and in your mind you've now learned something. He said you've got to we've got to really analyze this and really look at it. But my ability was to say, actually, okay, well, tomorrow is the bit that I can change. I can't change yesterday. I can learn from it. And it's exactly the same here. When you did an assignment, and you didn't hand it in on time, or it wasn't the quality and it wasn't the grade that you wanted it to be, or if it's about your business, what the last customer, why did they cancel with us? You're trying to break it down to the point of what can I take away from that's useful tomorrow. But entrepreneurs are very good at isolating that. That was a sunk cost yesterday. The opportunity cost is I'm not going to waste any more time thinking on it. Tomorrow's another day. So think about it in terms of the learning. This is really pivotal. It seems quite weak in the comparators, but just keep an eye on time. One client that I was working with, he was trying to figure out what his leadership style was. And what we had to do was unpick everything and say, what type of leadership style do you want to be based on the learnings that you've had in your interactions recently? And we started from a place of, okay, situational leadership, which means that you act in a different way in different sectors when you're dealing with different people of different knowledge levels. And that learning that he gained from that allowed him to have a basis then to think about where he goes forward as a leader within his growing, fledgling organization. Right, just conscious of time, I'm waffling, so I will carry on. So the challenger mode, you feel blocked by industry rules, fixed costs, or a sense of it's just how it's done. So we move from we're not going to accept those those constraints, to questioning inherited rules. What must actually be true here? So this is the first principle idea. Dalalio made this really famous. So did like we said, Elon Musk earlier. He's This is about challenging the status quo. What's actually true in this situation? So, am I actually really? Is my problem or my challenge really a problem or a challenge, or is it just something that I just need to deal with? I just need to make a decision, but I don't like the two decisions that I need to make a choice between. So challenging that status quo. And lastly, the ownership thing. You feel overwhelmed by external market forces and helpful colleagues or systemic problems. So external world, external blame and waiting, internal agency and action. What is fully within my control right now? What can I do that's going to help me move this forward? So what might be that next step that I need to do that's going to really give me the smallest step? And that step might be to change the way in which you think about what you're doing. So let's pull all this together. Hopefully you can see this. What I'm going to ask you is, in terms of your problem, your challenge, your issue, whatever you're looking to work on here, what are you noticing? What you'll often notice is that the challenge itself has not changed in any way, in any way, shape, or form, but your relationship to that has significantly changed. So let's just run a really quick example. Conscious of time, so we'll run a really quick example to give you a sense of how this might work. So we're going to take this presentation as an example. So where I started was, okay, I've been asked to do a presentation. I'd love to do it on something that's relevant to where I am, but I'm procrastinating. I'm not committing to getting this done within enough time frame in order to do it, to be comfortable, to be able to present to you guys. So I started with the piece around, okay, I feel a bit stuck. So I think, what resources were available to me? Well, I have knowledge because I have my experience from the doctorate. I have books, I have the internet, I have AI, I have study notes, videos, all that stuff that's there. And so I thought, okay, how do I now build this out? I know what the 5 modes are, but now I have so much information. I have a wealth of information. I'm moving from that thing of, oh my God, overwhelmed now, because I'm feeling that I've got so much, I don't know what I can do with all this stuff. Well, the experimental piece is about, okay, well, I coach every day. Let's look at what the most relevant and the most evident comments that come up. Which are the 5 that I should really hone in on and say that these are the 5 modes that can help us grow our mindset? So started talking to the coachees about this. What did you notice in the session? What was the bit that was really useful for you? So I'm starting to experiment. I'm getting feedback. Then we come to the learning piece. I have so much information that I really want to share everything with you. And my original document had presentation had all about self-leadership in it. Had all about the key people like Carol Dweck, etc. in it. But it's just too much because we only have an hour tops, and there's enough to talk about and explore here without having to go into all that detail. So the learning was, oh, okay, I need to cut this back. And so what I'm thinking there is, what does that look like? So the challenger side of me is that, okay, these guys are investing a lot of time. What would be really useful? So I'm challenging myself here. What would be really useful for these guys that can take away? If it's a really simple model, like it is, that you could sit in that coffee shop without any tech and challenge one of the concepts of your challenge, your problem, your need, then that would be a really good result. So I'm challenging where I'm going with this because I want to make sure that it's useful to you. And the lastly piece is the ownership piece. And it was a case of, okay, now I've got all this information. Now I need to just create that first draft. I need to start something let's just get something done. Let's take that bit around this. Nobody's going to write this for me. I wanted to do it for you guys so that I could share the way in which we work as coaches, and share that actually there's a route through no matter where you are. And if you just take one piece away from this, that actually I can think about what I'm thinking about differently, and that comes to a different result, then that's great. That's my responsibility. That's my ownership. So then it's about taking it to the world and bringing it and sharing it with you guys today. So thinking about this as a self-help guide, thinking about the whole idea, this one matrix, next time that you're in a challenging situation, if you feel you're sat there and you're overthinking it, you can think, okay, I'm overthinking it. I need to do some experiments. I need to try something that's really simple. Okay, that client didn't want to talk to me. I feel really knocked back over this one. Okay, what can I learn from this? Okay, I feel really blocked. I don't know really what I'm doing with this in the challenger mode. Okay, what assumptions am I harboring that I should really try and take away? Oh, that colleague said that about me and it made me feel really bad. I'm blaming someone else. Let's take some agency, take some ownership. Okay, what am I going to do differently? So I'm jumping back to learning. What can I do now? Because I'm taking agency of myself. If I'm feeling stuck, if I'm waiting for other people, what can I do now that's just something really quick and easy that will help me move that forward? And again, you're moving from that need more to just start now, to just try something now. So this self-help guide, well, I hope will be something that's really useful for you. So let's tie all this together. So the entrepreneurial learning loop is really straightforward. We learn by our actions and by experiences. So we start with something, which is an action. So if you just think about all this stuff but don't do anything about it, you never get an outcome. You never get something that then can give you more insight, which then you can adapt and then you can use that to go forward. So it's cyclical. So thinking about this, if you're from a coding world, I love the idea of OODA. OODA is the observe, orientate, decide, and action. It's about and actually the big piece in here, just like this learning loop, is the orient piece. So when you orient yourself to what's going on around you, that's the contextual piece in the middle here. Then you gain momentum going forward, and that's what we're ideally looking for. Is you're looking for that again. We started off this talk with acting deliberately and with intentionality. There's a really strong term in coaching, which is about where by a guy called Miles Downey, a really well-known executive coach, and he says what we should be focusing on is intentionality. So we should be working with intentionality, but it's where we give the attention that's the most important. Coaching, that's like a T, if you like. So intentionality, attention. And the intention piece is the bit that you're in charge of. Is where do we give the focus to get an outcome that helps us then bridge the gap to be able to take a next step forward. So just to finish off, last slide, just want you to think about this, as we close, reflect on the questions and the journey you've been through. Although this model is really simple, and when you try it, and I hope you've given it a little bit of a go in the background to have a play with it, the more you use it, the easier it becomes. It's one of those things which is sort of a paradox. It looks really simple on the surface, but the more you delve into it, you're thinking about who you are and how you're thinking, which then makes it a little bit complex. But hopefully today I've introduced you to the guide. I'd love you to give it some exploration, and then please feel free to reach out to me. I'd love to hear your feedback in terms of whether it works for you, whether it doesn't work, and if there's any additions, anything that you think could be useful there. But think about, as you're thinking about this, think about which mode created the biggest shift in you today when you're thinking about the challenge that you're in. We tend to gravitate towards a mode like overthinking, like not looking for resources, thinking that I'm that person that can do it all myself. Might be one example. We tend to gravitate to those more often. So one will have a higher percentage time spent in it than others, and you tend to start in those points because that's where we get stuck. So think about that. And the other thing as well is think about the opposite. Which do you tend to avoid? So which would you rather not do? So if I've got a big ego, then I don't want to learn. I don't want to. I want to. I know all the answers, so that's fine. But there's a learning in there for us as well, and a challenge in there. I'm not suggesting any of you are like that, so don't think that in any way, shape, or form. That was a joke, by the way. I'm sure Nicole will deal with any complaints after. So, so just think about this from as we sort of close out the talk. Think about things that actually everything's within your control. When I feel something, I will deliberately switch to this mode. So when I recognize that I'm stuck, I will deliberately make a step to change to something that's not about overthinking, that's something about what resource I can do. I will get my matrix out and I'll say, okay, where am I stuck on here? Why am I in this situation? Why am I dealing with this problem or this challenge? And it does come down to this really simple idea that, you don't need more time. You just need a different mode. This could be really quick. The easier you get used to this, working in this space, when I have conversations with coaches, whether it doesn't matter actually what walk of life they are from, when I've had the pleasure to work in deliver entrepreneurship programs in Ghana, they think exactly the same way as they do in the UK and Malaysia, etc., etc. And it's about the way in which we think about the way we're thinking, and it's about recognizing, okay, I'm empowered, I've got the agency, I can make a change here, and here's a framework for me to start playing with this as an idea. The minute you start challenging your own thinking process, the minute you can start moving forward. That would be one of the pieces that I put forward, Nicole, as actually, if I'm defining an entrepreneur, their ability to think about things in a different way, but to continue with that traction, continue with moving things forward. So there we go. Hopefully that's been useful to you guys.